You are listening to the Bat Flip Podcast, a baseball podcast from Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Damian and Matt.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Bat Flip Podcast. My name is Damian here with my co-host, Matt, coming to you on July 12th of 2022. Going to go over the announced All-Star Game rosters, some All-Star Game snubs, the confirmed home run derby participants so far. We had a minor prospect for draft pick trade between the Braves and the Royals, and then a rule that the MLB is going to implement in one of the minor leagues about the shift. And then we'll jump to players of the week at the end, like always. But before we get to all of that, how you doing, Matt? What's going on this week?
Doing pretty good. Just hanging out and just pretty much a normal week. It's middle of July. It's hot here and it's raining about once every 2 or 3 days. And when it rains, it pours. So, everything's going good. How about yourself?
It's going good over here. Like hot as well, as you're saying. Just trying to beat that and just keep it going. And not much going on, just watching some baseball, and sports world's been crazy in general, not just baseball. Just trying to keep on top of all of that and get ready for this All-Star game, because I think it's going to be pretty fun. But we'll go ahead and start looking at the All-Star game starters who were elected, and then we'll talk about who were named as replacements. So if we're looking at the American League side, you got Alejandro Kirk was selected as the All-Star game catcher for the AL. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at first base, Jose Altuve at second base, Rafael Devers at third base, Tim Anderson at shortstop, Aaron Judge, Mike Trout, and Giancarlo Stanton are your outfielders, and your DH is Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, so out of the starters, I mean, pretty much all these guys deserve to be in the game. Giancarlo Stanton, especially as an outfielder, it's kind of, I'm not super huge on that, even though he's had a good year. But 133 WRC plus, but the defense has been bad. The base running's been bad. He's really a DH. 22 home runs is good, but he's actually got the same WAR as Aaron Hicks, who's been criticized all year in New York. So I thought that was kind of interesting to look at. But out of those guys, I mean, Alejandro Kirk for sure, Guerrero. They're not I don't think he's having the best year at a first baseman. In fact, the guy who's probably having the best year at a first baseman is not on the team. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Altuve, Devers are sure things. Tim Anderson, I probably wouldn't have made that pick, but Judge and Trout, sure. And then, Shohei Ohtani, it actually ended up working out since Jordan is injured now. So Shohei Ohtani being the DH. He has been the second best DH in the American League this year, behind Jordan as a hitter. But, of course, Jordan being injured puts Shohei there. So,
yeah, and then let's go ahead and look at the reserve section real quick, and then we'll wrap that part up. But we have Jose Trevino from the Yankees, Luis Arias from the Twins, Andres Jimenez from the Guardians, Jose Ramirez from the Guardians, Xander Bogaerts from Boston, Byron Buxton from the Twins, Kyle Tucker from Houston, George Springer from Toronto, Andrew Benintendi from KC, Julio Rodriguez from Seattle. Jordan was elected as a reserve to begin with, but has now been replaced with JD Martinez.
Yeah, so out of the reserves, I mean, I thought the Trevino one was pretty interesting. He's had a great year. Not playing full time, but he's been really solid when he's been out there. He split time with Higashioka, but he does have the second best WAR in the American League out of catchers, and it's really close behind Alejandro Kirk. That's only in 58 games, so I thought they got that right. Even though you could have made an argument for Jonah Heim, who's been a better hitter than Trevino, but that was interesting. And then Luis Arias is pretty cool to see. Just a super contact-oriented guy. We don't see that all that much, but I mean he's been really, really good at the plate. He's 20th in the American League in wins above replacement. I thought. First base is kind of weird for him though because he does play all over. But Bogaerts and Ramirez definitely ought to be there. I think that Julio Rodriguez, that's really awesome that he's getting a chance in the All-Star game. Benintendi's there because I mean he's been pretty good this year, but he's mainly there because of the Kansas City needed a representative. And Springer's been good this year, but I thought there were probably some guys that could have gone ahead of Springer. You maybe look at Taylor Ward. Could have gone ahead of Springer. I thought he's had a really good year, even though it's for a team that's been not good. You could have made an argument for a couple other guys too, but Springer is really good, and I talk all the time about how underrated Springer is. So, I think most of these picks are pretty good for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, from the American League offensive side, I think it was like France, it was Heim, and I you could probably find one or two more, but I think overall they probably did a better job, at least than the NL. I think the NL, there's a lot of people that are left off the team that should be there, which we'll talk about there in a little bit.
Yeah, if we're talking about snubs, France is. I mean, I don't understand how he's not on there. Of course, at the end of the day, the guy that they picked ahead of him was Arias, right? And Arias has a higher WAR than France. I mean, France has played 4 less games only, so Arias has been incredible. 153 WRC plus. Only thing about Arias is it could have put him in a different position than France. So they could have put Arias at second base because he's played second base a good bit, and then France could have been the first place because Andres Jimenez is right in there too. But I get it. I honestly get it, but it's hard to. I don't like how they do the DH either. I think that they could just put good hitters that are not at other positions. Like that would be the perfect spot for France to get in. So.
And I don't know how you feel, but I also am not that much of a fan of each team has to have the representative because I feel like it does take some people. Like, if you say Kansas City didn't need to have a representative, would France be in over Benintendi? Probably.
I
mean, probably he would. Not saying.
Well, I don't think he.
Sure.
Well, it would an outfield, but they would have put an outfielder in there. But I mean it. Yeah, I get.
They already have 4 extra outfielders.
Well, I think they have a set number that they have to have, or maybe not. I don't know, but I mean it's one of those things. I get it. I get having the players because at the end of the day, the All-Star game is for entertainment, and it does kind of suck for a team if they're not allowed to have any. If a team doesn't have any players, a lot of their fans just won't tune in. But I mean, Kansas City fans, some might tune in to watch Benintendi, watch their representative play. I don't know. I mean, I just think. I guess I get it to a certain level. So.
And then also noting the last offensive player, at least in right now, there will be some other substitutions throughout the time. But Rob Manfred had a legacy pick on each side for the AL and the NL. And the AL side, he decided to have Miguel Cabrera be that pick. And I'll let you talk about that. But after we do the pitchers, you can just kind of wrap everything up with that one. Talking about the American League pitchers, we have Shane McClanahan, Justin Verlander, Alex Manoah, Nestor Cortez, Garrett Cole, Otani, Paul Blackburn, Martin Perez, Framber Valdez, and then looking at the bullpen, you got Clay Holmes, Emmanuel Clase, Jorge Lopez, and Gregory Soto.
Yeah, so out of the starters, I mean, Shane McClanahan, Verlander are obvious picks. Garrett Cole, I think definitely it's deserving. I look at Shohei. I think that's great that Shohei's there because on a rate basis, he's honestly been like a top 2 or 3 pitcher. And then you got a couple guys who are there because they needed a representative. Oakland. Paul Blackburn's been their best player, probably pitcher or hitter. So, that's why he's there. Martin Perez, he's been good, but he's been really good. He's probably been deserving of being on the team, but Texas needed a player, so he's in there. And then, I mean, Framber Valdez as well. He's such a weird pitcher, but he has been really good. The one that I don't understand how Kevin Gossman's not on the team. I really don't. And I mean, with all due respect to Nestor Cortez, he's been great this year. Kevin Gossman's been better, and Kevin Gossman's been a little bit better than Alek Manoah, although Manoah's pitched a lot more innings, so I get that. But Kevin Gossman leads the American League in WAR for pitchers at 3.7. I mean, I don't. It is tough to leave him off the team. And then relievers wise, you got a couple there that are there because they're lone representatives: Jorge Lopez and Gregory Soto, and then the other two, Clay Holmes, Emmanuel Clase. There's not a lot you can say about them. I mean, they're just phenomenal pitchers. So definitely some interesting picks there. Um, you know, honestly, I don't know if they really got the pitchers right, but they did they did okay. So
Yeah, the only other pitcher that I would mention that I think should probably be in consideration, or maybe even got snubbed too, is Dylan Cease.
oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, I
he's
didn't even
had he's had a phenomenal year so
yeah
far, and he should probably be in that consideration. He probably should be in over Nestor as well. Like I
yeah
know Nestor was a good story to begin the season; he was really good, but
yeah
he's kind of fell off recently.
yeah.
And Gossman and Cease are definitely better than
Yeah,
them.
and one other point too, with these guys, if they're tied, I mean, look at the stats other than just ERA. Nestor's got a great ERA, but like I, at the end of the day, I think that Dylan Cease has been a much better pitcher. I mean, he's got 13 strikeouts per nine. He's thrown more innings, even though it's only 4 or 5 more innings. I mean, he's been better of late. I mean, Nestor's in there because he's a Yankee and he's a good story. I mean, and that's cool for him, and I'm happy for Nestor Cortez. That's a good story, but it's just kind of one of those things where I don't I don't especially love that, but
It's
um,
just more deserving
yeah,
players. Like
yeah,
we understand, it's a good story for these guys,
yeah,
and we're not saying
exactly,
that they don't deserve to be. It's just that
right.
these guys we feel are more deserving
Yeah,
in
it's
general.
whoever's
Like
most deserving, and some of these guys will get added because
yeah,
guys who pitch over the weekend won't be pitching in the All Star games. They'll add a couple more. I'm sure that Gossman will get added, or
well,
at
and
least he should.
like Dusty
Um,
Baker said today that Verlander's not going to pitch in the All Star game, pretty much.
right. So,
So like
which makes
he
sense.
he should, if he's not going to pitch in the game, at least let one of these other guys who
Yeah,
may potentially get in there.
yeah. Like deceased might be a guy who doesn't start. Shane Bieber's another guy.
Yeah,
Shane Bieber's been the fourth best pitcher in the American League by WAR. Now he has a 3.44 ERA, but he's got a 2.81 FIP, and he's been really, really good. So, just a little bit of bad luck and defense behind him have struggled. So, definitely some guys out there who are probably a little more deserving, but still, I mean, everyone in. I don't think there's just an absolute like crazy awful pick in here. I mean, all these guys have been good this year to an all-star caliber player. I mean, maybe Gregory Soto. I haven't even really paid that much attention to him, but um, the rest of them, I mean, been very good. So Gregory Soto is a two-time All-Star, by the way.
yeah, he
It's
made it
pretty
last
crazy.
year.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
I
So
think he's actually been pretty decent for the
yeah,
Tigers this year and has a bunch of saves. So anyways, let's jump over to the National League and we'll look at the elected starters there. You got catcher Wilson Contreras, at first base Paul Goldschmidt, at second base Jazz Chisholm Jr., at third base you have Manny Machado, at shortstop you have Trey Turner. Your outfielders are Ronald Acuna Jr., Jock Peterson, Mookie Betts. Your elected DH starter was Bryce Harper, but that has already, now that we know that he's out, has said that William Contreras will start with Harper sidelined. So both Contreras brothers are going to start for the NL team this year. So I think that's a pretty good story.
yeah. I look at this and that the Contreras story is really cool. That's the first time since I don't remember what year it was, but it was Roberto and Sandy Alomar started together back in the early '90s, or it might have been even in the late '80s. I think it was the early '90s though. So that's a pretty cool story. And then you got this team. I mean, I think that the National League team was very, very poorly put together. I thought, um, you know, uh, I don't know how, you know, Trey Turner's ahead of Dansby. I mean, that's kind of crazy to me. Jazz Chisholm, I think is great, and I'm a really big fan of Jazz Chisholm. But he's missed a lot of games. There's other guys who I probably would have thought maybe should be starting ahead of him. Of course, some of that's because they're put at the wrong positions. Although, I mean, I think Jeff McNeil's probably been better than Jazz Chisholm. So, I mean, I think that might be one you could look at. I don't remember where he was in voting, but he's listed as a second baseman on the reserves. Manny Machado, Paul Goldschmidt, definitely deserving. Wilson Contreras for sure. Uh, Ronald Acuna Jr. I mean, as much as I love him, I mean, he hadn't. I don't know why he's people vote for him because they like him, which is great. But I mean, he's probably not deserving of being a starter on the All-Star team in the outfield. Jock Peterson's kind of up there, and I get why he's a starter, but at the same time, like, there's other guys. I mean, there's other guys you would have put ahead of him. I mean, um, so, and then you look at Mookie. I think should probably be there, and then anyways, so interesting stuff. I think that I don't know. There's a lot of issues for me with the starters, but of course the starters it's fan voting and it always goes weird. So
that's what I was gonna say. It's all fan voting there, and there's definitely some question mark ones, but overall. But looking at the reserves there, you got Travis d'Arnaud at catcher, Pete Alonso and CJ Cron at first base, Jeff McNeil at second base, Nolan Arenado at third base, Dansby Swanson at shortstop. The outfield reserves are Kyle Schwarber, Starling Marte, Ian Happ, and Juan Soto. And then to fill the DH spot, Garrett Cooper was added for Contreras, who has been moved up to the starting lineup. And the legacy pick from Rob Manfred is Albert Pujols.
Yeah, so I mean, you look at catchers. That's one that a lot of people had problems with, and I think they got it. They probably got it right. I do think Will Smith has been really good, but Travis d'Arnaud, if you look at some of the advanced metrics, has been worth the same WAR. Travis d'Arnaud doesn't play every day, but he's been close to Will Smith's bat. But he's been a much better defensively, mainly in the framing aspect. It just kind of depends on how you value that. But they've both been really good, and I think Will Smith would have been deserving there as well. You look at some of these other guys, Pete Alonso should be there. CJ Cron's there because of the need for a representative from Colorado, and he's probably been their best player. I think Freddie Freeman got snubbed from first base. He's not having the same year as he's had it in the past at times, but he's been extremely good. He's been the second most valuable first baseman, and it's not really close to number 3 so far this year. So, in fact, number three is not on the team either. So, CJ Cron's been the 5th best first baseman in the league this year based on WAR. And Pete Alonso's 4th. So, I mean, I would have gone with Freeman or Josh Bell over, although Pete Alonso and CJ Cron are really close to Josh Bell. But, Jeff McNeil, he's been really good. Nolan Arenado should be there. It's one of those things, too. I mean, Austin Riley has been like a top 10 player in the NL this year. He's been extremely good, but and he's a snub. But at the same time, if you can only have 2 third basemen, I mean, Machado and Arenado, it's kind of hard to put him over one of those 2 guys. So that just kind of makes it difficult for Austin Riley, even though he's probably one of the 10 best players in the league. And then you look, it's kind of another time too where that DH spot, being for could be for anybody, I guess. But Dansby Swanson, I think he should be starting, but he got the nod on the team. Schwarber, he's hit a lot of home runs. I don't know why Starling Marte is on the team. It doesn't make much sense to me. There's been a lot of better outfielders than Starling Marte this year. No offense to him, but he's the 3rd best outfielder on his team. Behind Jeff McNeil, who he's on the team as a 2nd base. So Brandon Nimmo, I think, would have been a much better pick. Gavin Lux has been better. I don't know. Ian Happ's there. That's cool. He's been really good. And Juan Soto, he's even in a down year, he's one of the best players in the game. So cool for Garrett Cooper to get added. He has been the 3rd best if you're looking at guys who are pretty strictly DHs. So that's really cool for Garrett Cooper, a guy who's kind of a journeyman type player. Until kind of late, he's a late bloomer, and he's killed it for the Marlins this year. So that's cool for him.
Yeah, overall, there's a lot of arguments you can make, but at the end of the day, I mean, Tommy Edman should probably be on this roster somewhere. I mean, probably even over Jeff McNeil at second base. You mentioned the whole thing with Riley. I still feel like he should be on the roster at some area. I mean, if that's the DH, or I understand the positional flexibility type issue, but I feel like he should be on there still. You mentioned Will Smith, Nimmo. I mean, I mean, heck, even if you're making a case, I mean, I know he's not going to be the most valuable player there, but if we're talking about each team needs a representative, I'd probably rather see Brandon Drury get the nod for the Reds over Luis Castillo, just because this type of season he's
Yeah.
having, and Castillo had the injuries to start with. So I guess that's probably another name. He can fit in the outfield slot or infield, whatever. But I mean, overall, I don't hate I think they got most of the picks right there. I mean, you mentioned Freddie with first base, but I mean, Pete should be there. Arenado should be. Dansby should be. Ian Happ probably should be. Juan Soto, if you're needing the representative for the Nationals, it should be Josh Bell. But if you already so loaded at first, you had to have Soto there. Okay. And I do wonder if like having Soto there, which I know we're going to talk about it in the next little step too, is part of like, hey, we'll add you if you do like the home run derby. Because I know a lot of people are being like sticklers on they want to be on the team if they want to do the derby. Or whatever. So I don't have as much issue, honestly, with everyone there. I mean, there's arguments we can make for other guys, but overall, I don't hate it in general.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, there was like 2 or 3 head scratchers to me on this
Yeah.
team, but it's not horrible. I mean, to me, Starling Marte was a head scratcher. I mean, I don't know, but looking at the pitchers now, Sandy Alcantara definitely. Corbin Burns, Joe Musgrove, Max Fried, Tony Gonsolin, Luis Castillo, Clayton Kershaw, Carlos Rodon are the starters, and then relievers Hader, Edwin Diaz, Ryan Helsley, David Bednar, and Joe Mantiply.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, there's maybe a couple other guys you can throw in here, but honestly, I feel like they got most of the pitchers correct, if not all of them. Like, people are going to scratch their head at Mantiply, but he's been like one of the most dominant, like late inning relievers for the Diamondbacks, and people just don't even realize that because he's on the Diamondbacks. Bednar's been good for a couple years. Helsley, Diaz, amazing seasons. Hader has been untouchable this year, pretty much. And then look at the rotation, like Sandy, we talk about him every single day. He could be our pitcher of this week again. Had 2 phenomenal starts. I think he went 13 shutout innings this week. I want to say
7 against the Mets, and then 6 against somebody.
Yeah, still didn't even get pitcher of the week, which is insane to me. Corbin Burns should be there. Musgrove should be there. Max Fried, Gonsolin for what he's done. I made the argument if with Castillo right there, if the Reds needed that, you could probably have a different pitcher in at that part. Maybe like Logan Webb or Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler are just guys that I would probably rather see in over Castillo. Rodon, he was a late ad. He wasn't on the initial roster, but he's late ad, so at least he got on there. And that's for Josh Hader because I think Hader's wife is pregnant, and I think they're going to have the baby over that time, if I'm not mistaken. And then Kershaw, he's on there. I made my case for him last week to be the starter, but that was more of a commissioner pick. At the end of the day, he wasn't voted on by the peers or the players or the managers or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I would have picked someone other than Kershaw. I mean, obviously, like you said, that wasn't really a peer's choice or anything, but I mean, there's other pitchers who are way more deserving this year, like Zach Wheeler. I mean, he's been far more deserving. Logan Webb. I mean, Kershaw's been really good, but he missed a lot of time. Yeah, he missed a lot of time. So, you might look back at the end of the year and say, "Oh wow, Kershaw has been one of the best pitchers in baseball." But as of right now, he's missed so much time. It's hard for him. And if you're going to add a pick like that, why not add Wainwright? If you're going to add a pick like that, Wainwright's got a 3.15 ERA in 105 innings, and this might be his last year. So
if it was in St. Louis, they would.
I know, but anyways, but I do think that whoever's the most deserving probably, and Wainwright might end up getting added late. I mean, because some of these guys will pitch this weekend. In fact, I think Max Fried's set up to start this weekend. He pitched last night, so he would be in line to pitch like Friday or something. Probably won't pitch in the game. But some of these other guys, I'm sure, the same way. I think Carlos Rodon pitched last night, maybe. So he'll probably pitch again. But we'll see what happens. Like I say, there was a lot of guys, and then relievers. I think that they pretty much got the relievers right. You could definitely put, Hader, Diaz, and Helsley have to be on, or they've been the top 3. And then, but Bednar and Mantiply, they were definitely the only possible players on their teams for it. So, there's been other guys. AJ Minter, I think, deserved to be there. Devin Williams definitely deserves to be there. But it's hard to pick over Hayter, Helsley, and Diaz. And then, you got the other guys that are. Mantiply's been really good too. I mean, I don't want to down what he's done. A 2.08 ERA on the season, so really solid. But
yeah, and that just ballooned up over like
yeah.
the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I know for a long time he had like an under 1 ERA.
Yeah, he's closer to his metrics now too. I mean,
Yeah.
his metrics are low 13s metrics, and that's what he's got now. So he deserves to be there. I mean, relievers are so volatile that it's hard
Absolutely.
to. But yeah, so it definitely interesting. And we talked about last week, who would start. But I would pick McClanahan, and I mean, if we're looking at who's deserving, I mean, I think you pick Sandy probably in the National League. But I don't know. They might go with Kershaw. They might the manager's Brian Snitker. He might go with Fried. You never know. So, but we'll see what happens. I think definitely think that McClanahan and Sandy. But hey, if you're looking for views though, Kershaw versus Verlander would be pretty interesting. So.
It would be if Dusty Baker would let him pitch.
Well, that's his Dusty Baker's. Oh yeah, that's right.
I just said he's not. He
yeah,
told us that he wasn't going to pitch.
He's not going to pitch at all. But that would be really fun if it was Verlander versus Kershaw.
That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But that's going to wrap up the All-Star Game rosters and who we think are snubs so far. Let's go ahead and move over to the Home Run Derby. We have 5 of the 8 participants confirmed so far. And those being Pete Alonso, who has won the last 2 home run derbies. So he's going for the 3-peat. We have Kyle Schwarber. We have Ronald Acuna Jr., Juan Soto, and Albert Pujols.
Yeah, so, the home run derbies for fun. And I think that's kind of shown by this. I mean, for one thing, I'm really surprised that Ronald Acuna Jr. is doing it because he's been injured so much. And I don't think it's that big of a deal, with a lot of his injuries being lower body related to his knee last year, and then just kind of some working back into it injuries. But that's kind of interesting that he's doing it. I think Soto is a guy who's fun to see in it. I think it's awesome that Pujols is going to do it because he can still hit the ball really hard. And in his last year, that's really cool. You kind of had to have Alonso if you wanted to do it because someone has got to dethrone the champ. So he's won the last 2. You kind of had to have him in there. But definitely interesting stuff. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun for sure. And the Pujols selection, it's kind of easy because if you don't get any of the Dodgers, which Mookie's not doing it, Freddie's not doing it. Will Smith said he'll do it if he's on the roster, which he's not at the moment. It automatically gives LA fans the hometown guy to kind of root for at that point. But Pete, it's going to be hard to see Pete losing. I mean, he's just been so good at something like this. Schwarber, he's really good. I mean, all these guys are really, really good at this. Like I put in our chat the other day, like, is this shaping up to be one of the greatest home run derbies, or if not the greatest home run derby ever, just through 5 people so far? Like, could you imagine if you got, I mean, I know Judge said he wasn't going to do it, but if you got Judge, Stanton, and Trout, or like Stanton in there, Julio Rodriguez, who would be really fun to watch as well. Like, this home run derby is going to be absolutely loaded. And I think it's one of the most loaded ones in the past handful of years.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be a lot of fun. And, sometimes the home run derby is a little bit, it can be a little bit overrated at times, but I think this year's going to be a lot of fun. Especially, I can't wait to see what Albert Pujols can do in the home run derby at age 42 or whatever he is. I think that'll be a lot of fun. So, I don't know. That's kind of weird that's like the first guy I think of being excited about watching try to hit home runs. But I think that's going to be really cool. So,
I just hope he needs to go for like 30 in the first round, or like it's not going to be any fun because he's probably going to lose in the first round against these guys, but he has to give us some sort of a show there at some point. But that was just a fun little thing to talk about, and we'll that will be completed by the time we talk next time, so we'll be able to go over that. But we had a minor trade this week between the Braves and the Kansas City Royals, with Atlanta getting pick 35 in this draft, which was a competitive balance pick, which is why I was able to get traded. And Kansas City received prospects Drew Waters, Andrew Hoffman, and CJ Alexander.
Yeah, so the competitive balance pick, that's a pretty big deal because that's pretty early in the draft. And not only do you get that slot to pick in, but you get the slot value money-wise. And the Braves farm system is today was ranked 29th out of 30 in the out of all the farm systems. They've had so many graduations and trades over the last few years. So, kind of getting that extra money, I think they'll probably spread it out and try to get them some quantity of prospects to start pulling up in the low minors, because they really need to start developing some more talent for the next wave. And and the Royals get a few prospects that are at least interesting. Drew Waters has fallen off a cliff since his 2019 Double-A campaign, which was fueled by a 436 batting average on balls in play. His approach at the plate is just not good. He swings and misses a ton. His lowest strikeout rate since high A is 24%. And this year in AAA, he has an 84 WRC plus at age 23, and this is his third season in AAA. So, it's very worrying for Waters. In fact, he was in AAA in 2019, so it's really he had the 2020 where nobody played AAA, but over 30% strikeout rates last year and in 2019. This year it's come down a little bit, but still not hitting the ball very well. But he's a very high end talent wise, athletic, switch hitter, can hit the ball really hard. So definitely still kind of interesting, and it's a type of thing where change of scenery might help him. Andrew Hoffman is actually a guy who has been pretty good in the low minors. He was a pretty low draft pick a couple years ago, but he's kind of shown maybe the opportunity to be a back end of the rotation type guy, or maybe maybe looking at a guy who could go to the bullpen and do well. He's had he's got really good numbers in this year in high A. And then CJ Alexander's been at Double-A for like 4 years, but he's got some athletic talent. So, not totally lost there, but definitely an interesting trade. I think it's honestly value-wise probably pretty even, but it depends on what you think of Drew Waters, because if you think you can maybe fix him, then it could be a big time win for the Royals, especially since they'll have a spot for him to play at the big league level. But if you think Drew Waters is a lost cause, like a lot of Braves people do, then it's probably just throwing away a draft pick if you're Kansas City. So definitely an interesting trade, and we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting to see what Drew Waters does with some playing time at the big league level, most likely coming after a future Benintendi trade from Kansas City.
And even maybe a Michael Taylor trade.
Oh, yeah, that too.
But, it like you mentioned, it's going to be can Kansas City get Drew Waters, a change of scenery, and unlock something in him that the Braves, weren't able to. It still does kind of head scratch to me that they'd give up on a 35th pick with where they're at in their rebuild. They could use that to get more talent in that system, and then taking the chance on a guy like Drew Waters, with the other two kind of just being lottery ticket guys as well. I mean, even Waters is sort of a lottery ticket guy himself. Just seems like you're taking a lot of risk on there and giving up bonus pool money in your draft class and a good pick at that area where there's probably going to be a decent amount of talent still left. But if you truly feel that you can unlock something in Drew Waters, and if you do, that makes this trade look a lot better, because you get a younger guy. I think he's 23 or 24, and hasn't been up there, so you have his full 6 years of service time or whatever in the major leagues. If you need bodies to fill after you make some future trades, then all right. We can't make a big deal about it. I mean, it is just a 35th pick for a handful of prospects, but it'll be one to watch for the coming years and see who they draft with that pick. Because if they draft something like Superstar with it, everyone's going to look back and be really scratching their heads at the time. But anyway, the last little thing before we jump to players of the week we wanted to mention is the MLB today announced that they're going to try a new shift regulation down. I believe it's in low A. And they've already started with there has to be 2 fielders on the infield on each side of second base, and then those infielders also have to be positioned on the dirt. So basically eliminating any kind of the shift that you basically have been able to do the past couple years, and you've seen in go into the major leagues. But now they're even taking that a step further, because what people were doing is they were just putting their shortstop, right kind of off just barely to the left of second base and kind of modifying the shift that way a little bit. But they're going to try some pie shaped lines. Not entirely sure what that's going to look like, but there's going to be some chalk lines from the base to the outfield grass that the infielders cannot pass, at least until the ball is pitched. Is how I was reading it. So it's going to be interesting to see how that happens. I'm not a big fan of a pie shaped thing. I'm still not even a big fan of telling people that they can't stand on the grass. I think I'm perfectly fine with saying 2 people have to be on each side of the base. I think that's fine. But if you want to put your second baseman all the way out short right field to help that lefty hitter, well, then that lefty hitter can just hit a little chopper or whatever right past the pitcher, and that ends up being a hit 99% of the time. And it helps eliminate, you're taking away a guy's for speed aspect right there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a terrible rule. I think it's, for one thing, I don't like limiting where a team can position their players defensively. I mean, I think that if you're position your players however you want to based on how the guy at the plate hits the ball. I mean, I don't, I think that's a part of the game. It's part of the strategy, and there's adjustments players can make, and it's a skill to not hit it that way. I mean, I think that's really, I don't like that. Now, if you're gonna do something, the 2 players on each side of the bag, I mean, okay. I mean, I know something's coming. So, if you're gonna do something, that's kind of something I guess that works. But I think it's terrible idea to have like pie shape, make it too complicated. Have pie shapes out there and lines all over the field telling you where you can play, where you can't play. I think it's, it makes it where the hitter doesn't have to have any kind of bat control, just swing away, swing for the fences every time. And if you hit it, just pull the ball through the hole every time. I don't really like that at all. So I think that it's gonna eliminate a certain skill set from players. It's gonna make way more players Joey Gallo type players, which is bad for the game. Whether you like Joey Gallo or not as a player, I think that's bad for the game to have just the strikeout, home run, walk type guys, and that super heavy pool type hitter. So, and I'm sure there's some players that aren't happy about this at all too. I mean, because like I say, I mean, that's a skill that a lot of players have made their careers off of. I mean, look at a guy like Tommy Edman. I mean, it's just, I don't know. But like I say, if you're gonna have the shift rule, 2 guys on each side of the infield, okay. The not letting them get on the grass at all, and the not letting them play close to the middle and having to be within certain lines on the field, that's just stupid. So I think that they need to, hopefully MLB is just kind of throwing stuff at the wall to see what works, and they decide against putting that in the big leagues, because I think that's just a really, really, really bad idea. And one other thing too is that I think that in the minor leagues, I get maybe low minors, it's not that big of a deal, but even in the minor leagues, I think that it's important to let the players are there to develop, and they need to develop at what the rules are at the big league level at the current moment. So a lot of the new rules being put into the minor leagues, I think, do it at independent ball. They've got these affiliated independent leagues that are, or not affiliated, but they're like, they're taking suggestions from MLB on rules to try out. Let it happen in the Atlantic League or something. I don't think it should be happening in the minor leagues where players are there to develop with major league rules. So that's just kind of my 2 cents on that. But if they change the rules at the big league level, then obviously I think they should be changed at the minor league level too. But right now, I would prefer them be more of like changing those rules in the independent leagues instead.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that thought as well, than letting the minor league players play with the actual rules for now. I don't. It's going to be interesting to see. It doesn't seem like Rob Manfred has ever had a good grip on what to do, anyways. So I don't know why any of us are going to be shocked by him doing something bad down there. Like you mentioned, hopefully it's just them saying, "Hey, we've done this for half a season. Let's see what this looks like, and then we'll go from there." Because, like you mentioned, some sort of banning the shift is going to come back because they want the offense to jump back up, and that's just how it is for some reason. So, anyways, that will wrap up that part of it, and we'll jump over to players of the week and wrap this show up. So, who do you have for your hitter this week?
So my hitter this week is going to be a guy that he had a good week. There was a lot of good hitters this week, honestly. There were several guys. We talked about a few of them with the All-Star game earlier. So, but I went with Aaron Hicks. Aaron Hicks has really gotten a lot of criticism this year, and a lot of it really hasn't been super fair to him. But this week he hit 421 with a 522 on base, a 1.158 slugging in 6 games, hit 3 homers, .8 WAR. He's been pretty good this year. I mean, people are just keep dogging on Aaron Hicks, and he's been a solid defender, a solid base runner, 9 stolen bases, positive grades in the metrics. 110 WRC plus at the plate. He's got his trademark plate discipline still there. 15% walk rate. His strikeout rate's not astronomical, and the batting average is kind of low. The slugging's not super good, but he's got 1.4 wins above replacement on the year. I mean, this guy's been really solid. So people need to stop dogging on Aaron Hicks for the time being, at least, and see what happens going forward there. I mean, the Yankees have the means to make a trade, but he had a great week this week. Obviously, he hit half of his home runs on the season this week. So that's part of it too. But Aaron Hicks playing pretty well right now, and that's good for the Yankees. So
Yeah, and I think the even part of that sentence you said that could be shortened down is Aaron Hicks is playing.
yeah,
I think that's the big thing. I mean,
The
he's
injury
at 75 games this year, which is his most games since 2018. You look at 2019, 59 games. Obviously, 2020 was a shortened season, 54 games, but 2021, 32 games. So he's already at 75 games this year. His most plate appearances since that 2018 season. It's one of those where he is playing in New York, and the spotlight's always going to be bigger there, and the scrutiny's always going to be more there. I mean, if he's playing for the Twins still right now, I don't think you hear as much outcry or anything on him right now. I mean, he's been just fine as a solid outfielder. Is there a thing where they can upgrade that? Probably, but I mean, he's been solid enough, and he plays a solid enough defense, which is pretty much what you need for a team like the Yankees.
Yeah, I mean, who are the Yankees going to go get to play center field?
Michael Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Michael Taylor's not an upgrade. I mean, obviously you can go add Michael Taylor for depth because there's a chance Hicks gets hurt. But unless you get Brian Reynolds, I mean, you're not really upgrading. So I don't really understand. Where the Yankees fans are coming from. And I honestly, and another thing is too, they won't Judge to play center. I think some Yankees fans, and I don't think that's a good idea long term. No. Judge has been really healthy this year, but we've seen in the past him get injured, at certain times, and I've seen there is some truth to the fact that a guy playing center is going to take a little bit more wear and tear than playing right. So even though Judge has graded out as average in center. I definitely think you want your star player to play right, and then go get somebody like and have Aaron Hicks play center. I mean, but just a little piece there on Aaron Hicks, but definitely a guy who has been really really killing it lately.
Absolutely. Well, for my hitter this week, you mentioned the first part of that Texas spinning spree last week with Marcus Semien on the offensive side. This week I went with Corey Seager. A guy who on the week, what did I do? Here it is. Go back over here. Sorry, I was on the wrong page. Where's this at? I think I'd be better set up for this. Because I hit it over here. There it is. He hit 455 on the week, a 519 on base percentage, and 1136 slugging, a 339 WRC plus, almost a full win above replacement this week. He was even pretty good defensively this week. 5 homers, 6 runs, 10 RBIs. Corey Seager is a guy who really struggled to start off the year. I mean, even if you look at his numbers overall, a 245 average with a 782 OPS. I mean, he does have 20 homers, but that doesn't look like somebody who was, a 10-year, $300 and something million contract guy. And then if you look at what he's done over the last month, a 296 average, 968 OPS, 8 homers, 17 runs, 19 RBIs. That's more of what you would expect from a guy getting that type of a contract. And we've mentioned Semien last week starting to get, start to live up to that contract. Seems like Seager's really starting to do that same thing. And maybe that's the two keys in the cog that they need to get this thing rolling again. And I think this is the type of production that a lot of people you would expect to see from Seager in general.
Yeah, talk about Corey Seager. Corey Seager has actually been extremely good this year. The only thing has just been the batting average on balls in play. He's been one of the most unlucky hitters in baseball this year. He's still been really good, a 120 WRC plus, almost 3 WAR. His defense has graded out really well this year, better than it ever has. He's got a 239. He's never run a batting average on balls in play under 300. This year he's running 239 right now.
Yeah.
So, that's a really, really, really low number. And his expected numbers are better than that. His expected batting average, he's running a 245 batting average. StatCast expected batting average has him at a 304. And his expected slugging at a 592. And his ex-WOBA, his expected weighted on base average, which is a metric. We don't use the ex-WOBA very often, but it's basically a metric that it scales you as a hitter, and it puts it on the same scale as on base percentage. It's over 400 right now. So he's been extremely good. He's just been super unlucky. I mean, his hard hit rate's still really good. His exit velocities are the same as they were last year. I think he's going to have a huge second half if he keeps playing like he's swinging the bat exactly like he has so far this year. Just having a little bit more luck. He's going to have a huge second half. I think Corey Seager's definitely turning a corner, and as you talk about, this week was a start of that. So
absolutely. So who do you have for your pitcher this week?
So my pitcher this week, there was again, pitchers wise, there were a lot of really, really good performances this week. I thought, and we like the same thing with, we talked about earlier, kind of, some of the guys who could have picked were all-star guys like Sandy Alcantara, all-star guy, Rodon, Kershaw. I picked Max Scherzer. Max Scherzer came back from the IL, and in his first game, had 11 strikeouts against the Reds, which was really impressive. His first game back, I mean, the Reds aren't good, but then, his second game was untouchable last night against the Braves, and what's a huge series going on right now between the Braves and the Mets. And Max Scherzer has looked really, really good since coming off the IL. 13 innings, has not walked anybody. He's got a ton of strikeouts. He's only given up 1 run on a homer last night to Austin Riley, and that's it in 13 innings. So Max Scherzer's been extremely good, and he's my player of the week for pitchers.
Yeah, Max Scherzer has looked like vintage Max Scherzer, like you said. And the Mets are going to be even scarier because Jacob deGrom is on the mend and making rehab starts already. So, now's a big series for them, and for Scherzer to come out against that Braves team and look as good as he did and just give up the 1 homer last night. That's going to be big time for that Mets team, getting a healthy Max Scherzer, and if you can get a healthy Jacob deGrom back, because the Braves have made it a run for that division again after there was a time there where we thought maybe the Mets were just going to run away with it. They've battled the injury bug. They're starting to heal up now, and the race is back on. So it's going to be interesting to watch those two teams going down the stretch and what the Mets are even going to do at the deadline.
Yeah, no doubt.
All righty. So for my pitcher this week, I went with Alex Wood from the San Francisco Giants. The Giants have been battling injuries with the rest of their rotation outside of Logan Webb and Carlos Rodon. Alex Wood is a guy who is pretty solid, will give you around a 4 ERA all the time. And on his last 2 games, had a 5 innings against Arizona, gave up 4 hits, 1 earned run, 4 strikeouts, no walks. And then against the Padres, 7 innings, 3 hits, 0 earned runs, 1 walk, 8 strikeout. Just big time starts for the Giants right now, who are kind of reeling. They're falling back. I believe they're, I want to say 13 games back in the division now. Let me double check that real quick. They are 13 games back now in the division. So they're 1 game above 500. So they're going to need some they're going to need some more performances like this from a guy like Alex Wood trying to help round out the rotation because they have lost Anthony DeSclafani for the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's Alex Wood's been had a great week. Alex Wood's actually been really good this year. His ERA is high, but I'll tell you the problem that he's had is the problem that his whole team has had. That
Defense.
that defense is awful behind him. I mean, you look at their team, with the exception of Logan Webb, who he's going to beat his metrics a lot of times just because of the type of contact he gives up. But Carlos Rodon, a 2.70 ERA with a 2.14 FIP. Alex Wood, a 4.43 ERA with a 3.26 FIP. Alex Cobb, a 4.71 ERA with a 3.14 FIP. And then the guys that are really struggling too are ground ball guys. Alex Cobb's getting 62% ground balls. That's why they just can't field it. I mean, even some of their relievers. I mean, you look at Tyler Rogers. He's a guy that's a huge ground ball guy. 57.3% ground ball rate, 4.50 ERA with a 3.28 FIP. So that's something that this team that they've got to figure out a way to piece their guys together and get better defensively. I don't know how they can do it, but that they really need to figure it out. I know that that's kind of a team that didn't care about defense. They were mixing and matching, platooning guys, getting their bats in the right lineup for good matchups. It's kind of been Gabe Kapler's thing, but they don't have a elite Brandon Crawford at shortstop anymore. They don't have Longoria is aging every year at third. I mean, Mike Yastrzemski's played center a lot this year. I mean, that he's not good out there. They've got to figure out a way. But Alex Wood and this whole rotation in general. I mean, you look at Rodon, Webb, Wood, Cobb. All four of them have over one WAR, and all four of them also have a FIP under 3.26. That's the highest FIP out of their top four in their rotation, and their ERA is pretty average. So this is definitely it's definitely a group that has been really, really good, but could just use some help from behind them.
Yeah, that's been the main thing for the Giants this year is that terrible defense, and I just don't know where they go forward with trying to improve this at the deadline. Their farm system's not great, and there's not many options out there for you to be able to go do that as defensive options, really. So it's going to be a head scratcher. I think this is, the defense, we didn't expect it to be this bad with the Giants, but I think this is sort of what we expected from the team even last year. Like we said all year long, they were not a 107 win team. Like they were not as good as they really were last year. I think we expected them to be close to 500 or maybe slightly above 500 team last year, maybe, 10 games over or whatever. And it just seems like that's kind of been the way they've played this year. And, they have had some key losses with Posey, and then Belt being out for a while, and then guys not bouncing back or having the years that they had last year. But I think this is more in line from what we actually really expected from this Giants team.
Yeah, I mean, this year they've played like a roughly 500 level team. I mean, that's just kind of been their thing this year. So, it's not been, it hasn't been great for them. We'll just put it that way. And one other thing to kind of look at when you look at defense for them, I'm wrong. Mike Yastrzemski's actually been pretty good defensively in center. He hasn't played a ton in center, but he's been pretty good out there, 2 outs above average. So I will admit that I was wrong there. But they have had a lot of guys that are negative in the negatives defensively this year, and they've had some Jock Peterson, who's DH some, but my God, he's been awful defensively. So. Brandon Belt's been awful defensively. Darren Ruff's been awful defensively. I mean, and these guys are key pieces for them. But yeah, definitely kind of a 500 team right now. It's hard to fix defense when it's an organizational issue. So
Right.
That's not just something. It's kind of like the Phillies. That's not just something you fix at the deadline. That's kind of the whole team is like that. You can't just add one great defender and make them all good. You maybe add a center fielder or a shortstop or something to make them better. But that's definitely a problem for them. So it hurts the pitching rotation that's been so good, and that's a shame.
Yeah, and at least I'll wrap it up real quick. But I do think there's some room for them to bounce back defensively. Like I don't think they're as bad of a defensive team as they've played this year. I think they've just been really unlucky on that so far. So I think there's some room there. Maybe if you make 1 or 2 improvements, if you can just slightly start getting that defense better, and then make a couple moves at the deadline for just solid defenders, even if it is like a center fielder or whatever. Maybe that is the jump start you guys need to get back to playing the style of baseball you need as a Giants team. So anyways, next week's episode will be the All-Star week. We'll probably be actually recording as the All-Star game's happening. And then we'll have the trade deadline preview and the trade deadline in the next couple weeks after that. So it's going to be a busy few weeks here with the Bat Flip podcast. Got anything else you want to wrap up on, Matt?
Not too much. Just a lot of good games going on this week. Everyone gets excited for the All-Star game this time of year, but it's a big time stuff happening this week. And we'll see what happens. There's some, the Braves Mets series is obviously huge. Some first place teams playing, Brewers Twins, Dodgers Cardinals is a big series. And hey, before we go, shout out to the Orioles. They've won 7 in a row. They're winning in the 8th inning right now tonight. Shout out to the Orioles. They've been playing really, really good ball. And they're a team that I don't think they're going to keep this up this year, but they look very interesting going forward with some of their prospects and how well they're doing. Some of them being called up this year so far, like Rutschman, and then some of them how well they did in the minor leagues, like Gunnar Henderson, who's been just absolutely insanely good in AAA so far. So shout out to the Orioles. It's good to see a team that's been mired in very deep rebuild and criticize as much as they have to start to figure some things out. So been a lot of fun for them.
Yeah, DL Hall's been pretty good down the minors too. But and we'll wrap it. I know we'll talk more about the Orioles next week when we do the breakdown. But just so you can see where we're at until that next week, they're 43-44. They are 1 game under 500. This is a team that most people expect we're still in the baseball, and as of it sitting right now, without their win today, they are 2.5 games out of wild card spot.
Yeah, and one other team to shout out: the Mariners have turned it around so well too. And I know we're running kind of ranting on that, but the Mariners, they're in the wild card right now. If that season ended today, they're 1 game, they're a half game out from Toronto now because the Toronto's finished and the Mariners haven't finished today. They were tied for the wild card coming into the day, and I think that they I'm trying to find the score, but they got postponed tonight. So they'll be a half game after tonight, but they're playing the Nationals, so they'll have a doubleheader against the Nationals. So that might be 2 wins.
Absolutely. We'll follow up on that next week when we do the first half breakdown and let you guys know where everything sits at that point, and looking forward to the second half. But that'll do it for this episode of the Bat Flip podcast. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next week.